Introduce our next speaker and the next talk. Silvia Almagia is a director of software and standards at ETSI, and she's leading a group of engineers who are working on developing software in support of standardization. Now, this is something that is great because this is exactly sort of the focus of much of the thought process that we witnessed here. One thing that I'd like to say about Silvia is that she was previously a technical leader at the ETSI testing and interoperability activities, where she hosted us very, very nicely at some of the NFV plug tests that were a few years back. And that was our first exposure to that. So I do remember, and thanks for that, Silvia. Please.
Okay, good morning. It's a real pleasure to be here. As Irfan mentioned, I'm Director of Software and Standards at ETSI, up the hill, 800 meters from here. So we're neighbors, and we have had the opportunity to collaborate on different activities with Eurocom and OAI. And again, it's a pleasure to be here today to explain a little bit what we're doing. So very, very quickly, I'm sure many people in the room know about ETSI, but I still had some questions yesterday and this morning about what we do and how we work. So very, very quickly, just to remind you that ETSI is an independent non-profit organization. We have over 900 member organizations all over the world. We have European in the name, but it's a global organization with a long track of technical work in the ICT standardization sector. We have a big community of experts and innovators working with us. In our membership, we have around 25% of SMEs. And then, of course, we have also large companies, operators, research entities, universities, and so on. We are one of the 3 SDOs recognized by the European Union and the home of 3GPP, as you know. But in addition to 3GPP, 5G, 6G, ETSI is also standardizing in many other areas. Put a list up here, I'm not going to go through them, but there are standardization activities on many, many different technical topics. So the idea of ETSI, we are like 130 people. We don't write the standards. We bring together companies, delegates from companies, and we provide them, we are enablers. We provide them the means, the governance, the tools, so that they can come together and write standards together. The main goal of these standards is, of course, interoperability, but there are other many interesting aspects of standardization, like economy of scale and enabling potentially a wide ecosystem of interoperable solutions where everybody can find the spot to put a product in the market. And now entering into the topic, there's more and more software in the world we're living, and ETSI is adapting to this new software-driven world. We're seeing more and more software in networks. We've been hearing that during the last hours, and yesterday we have now this commodity hardware with network functions running on top of them, with network services running on top of them. We have more and more software in the standards as well. Luckily, more and more we have machine-readable contents in the standards that don't belong so much into a Word document, but are better hosted in a Git repository. And we also have more and more software in research. In addition to all those great papers we're publishing, there's a lot of software that's produced by research activities, and we want to be able to build on that as well. So the answer from ETSI to this software-driven world is the creation of a new type of group, which is called the software development groups. And these have been designed and tailored for collaborative software development in support of standardization. So this time we're going to bring together delegates from companies, and we're going to help them work together in writing software, not standards. Okay? But of course, we're not aiming to become the next open source foundation out there. We're doing this activity because our goal is to write better standards, and these activities their main goal needs to be supporting standardization. We're going to give this group the choice of license, and this includes open source licenses. And actually, the 4 groups we're running are using Apache 2.0 license, but we're not mandating it to be open source. There's space and room for other type of licenses as well. And we're encouraging them to have open communities and meritocracy-based governance. This is something we've learned from other type of open source activities. It works very well when it comes to collaborative software. So why is ETSI doing this? There are several positive things that come out of bringing people together to write software. First of all, this is providing a toolbox to our standardization groups. It's providing them with a platform for quick prototyping, for experimentation, for new use case validation. And the idea is that things that are being standardized can be tested quickly, tried out quickly, and the feedback provided quickly, sometimes even before the standard is published. No, the idea of this is shortening the standardization cycles and improving the quality of the standards when they're published. We're also seeing this is a very powerful bridge between standardization and research. We have more and more research projects that they want to concentrate on innovation. They don't want to reinvent everything when they go to do research. So if there's a piece of software that works and solves part of the issue, they just want to take it and use it. And this allows them to put all the resources and time into proper innovation. And also, for us, this is super good because this is bringing us a new type of contributors that maybe are not super familiar with the standards, but the software development groups provide them with a bridge to channel their feedback into standardization. And it's also a vehicle to promote and facilitate the adoption of ETSI standards among software communities who might be reluctant to read through a pile of papers and prefer to just try the code, patch the code, and eventually provide feedback. How we structure these groups, so we're giving the groups quite some flexibility on how they're going to organize. On the top, we're going to have chair and vice chairs as in every ETSI group, and this is described in the ETSI directives. But underneath, they are going to be able to organize themselves as they think it's best for them. Our 4 groups are organized like this because this is a structure that allows them to grow organically. They can start very small, and then as the amount of software they produce gets bigger, it allows them to scale. So we're going to have a technical steering committee that's renewed quite often to make sure that it's the most engaged companies in the project that are part of the technical steering committee. So every release or every 2 releases, we're going to invite new companies to join the TSC if they're contributing a lot. And this technical steering committee is going to be overseeing all the code development activities that can be structured in modules. Depending on the amount of software, we will have a module group with 1 leader or several module groups with different leaders dealing with different modules of software. In parallel with this, we can have task forces to deal with aspects that are not necessarily related to coding, can be marketing, can be other types of activities. And again, we try to encourage the meritocracy approach to organizing and bringing people into these groups. The way of working, so participation is open to ETSI members, non-members, and individuals, and this is a first for ETSI, and we're happy about it. And of course, most of the work, and you know that, is done asynchronously and online. We have some GitLab platforms to host the code and the review processes. This is supported by Slack and by regular conf calls when needed, when we need to discuss, align, or troubleshoot things. We encourage the groups to have regular releases. Good pace for them seems to be every 6 months. And we also try, even if there's a lot of work, most of the work, technical work, can be done online, we encourage them to meet each other and to get together from time to time. Every 6 months also seems to be a good pace. And these plenary meetings can be done remotely as well, but sometimes to create community and to create, to create a sense of belonging, it's good that people get to meet each other from time to time. We also have hackfests where we show how the code works. We train new developers and we explain how the new features can be used and can solve problems. Okay, so I'm going to go through some success stories through the 4 projects we have created. You may have heard about Open Source Mano. This was created in 2016, actually before the concept of SDG Software Development Group existed. So this allows us to learn a lot how these communities, how these groups work. We grew and learned with them. Open source manual, sorry. Yeah. Open source manual was created to implement the management and orchestration stack defined by NFV, which was a standardization group in ETSI, and it's grown over these 8 years. Now Open Source Manual is providing a platform to create and manage networks as a service. The idea is that it's going to abstract all the complexity when you want to deploy a network service or a network functions. It's going to hide all the connections, complexity, configuration. You're going to create this entity and talk to this entity, manage the life cycle of this entity through APIs. This follows a very well-known paradigm in IT and public cloud. So Open Source Mano can orchestrate over OpenStack, Kubernetes, and public cloud. They just issued release 16 last week, and they're preparing a webinar in October. So if you want to be updated in what's going on in Open Source Mano, I would encourage you to follow the webinar. With OSM, we tried and fine-tune a little bit this feedback loop into standardization. It's been said this morning, it's tough to circle back and to bring back learnings into standardization. You need to have the good timing, you need to have the good format. And yeah, it took time, but we ended up having OSM that can consume natively the information model defined in NFV. It's taken from the ETSI Forge, which is hosting the data model, and they are generating code from there and linking and building that into the solution. And also, Open Source Manual has been sending feedback to NFV from the learnings of using this information model, some potential extensions, some bugs, and also a lot of feedback through the plug tests activities, interop events that Irfan was mentioning when he introduced me. And something we saw with Open Source Mano, and was not our first goal here when creating the project, we saw that it's very, very useful for research, and we started seeing a big ecosystem of research projects using Open Source Mano, bringing feedback, bringing new features, bringing developers. So that was really, really nice, a very, very nice side effect we had with it. And also Open Source Mano allow ETSI to understand how open source community works, and also you don't have a solution with just one piece of software, you're typically using multiple softwares, and Open Source Mano relays on other open source projects that are out there. Teraflow SDN was created in 2022. The aim is to develop an open source cloud native SDN controller, typically to address the use case of inter-data center connectivity. So it's going to work with transport networks, optical networks, and it's, even if not implementing directly ETSI standards, it's allowing to do a lot of prototyping, POCs, validation platforms. It's actually a WIM, a Wide Area Network Infrastructure Manager, and it's very useful in the context of NFV, of multi-access edge computing. Okay, it's been integrated with Open Source Mano, and it's been integrated with OSS BSS as well. They had their third release in April, and yeah, I have the link up there if you're interested. Teraflow SDN was born from research, was actually coming from one of these research consortium out there, and actually when they saw the value of what they were producing, when they saw that other projects were interested in using that project, they came to ETSI looking for a neutral home and a long-term home as well, because you know these projects run out of funding after 25, 30 months. So it allows them to have a bit of continuity and sustainability when they produce code, and it allows also the projects not to redo the same kind of software and reuse what has been done already. OpenSlice was created last year, 2023. It sits on the place of an operation support system in the NFV architecture. It's offering network slice as a service. It's been integrated with Open Source Mano, and it can talk with any NFV Mano stack. And it follows principles described in ETSI NFV, in ZSM. It's exposing northbound TM-form APIs, and it's also following 3GPP and GSMA principles in terms of slice templates and so on. It's currently being integrated with Teraflow SDN as well. They had their first release in July, and they're also preparing a webinar. Yeah. Okay. I won't insist here, they also have a very wide research ecosystem. And last project is OpenCAPIF. We created this, we launched this in January 2024. CAPIF is the common API framework defined by 3GPP. It allows network functions to expose APIs in a secure and consistent manner, and it allows network applications to come, discover, and consume those APIs in a secure way as well. So they also had their first release in July. They're also preparing a webinar. You also have the link there. And what I want to mention here, OpenCAPIF, even if it's a super young project, is already feeding back into 3GPP. We had a few weeks ago in Maastricht the first contributions from OpenCAPIF being accepted in 3GPP. So it's once again a nice implementation and a nice experience with experimenting with standards and providing feedback early. 3GPP is currently drafting the guidelines for CAPIF, and OpenCAPIF is allowing them to get actual concrete input and concrete feedback from an implementation. That's it, last slide. I hope you found some of these projects interesting. I hope you found the approach interesting. Participating, as I said before, is open to all. Creating a new SDG just requires the support of 4 ETSI members. It's been mentioned in the panel before that this need for collaboration among standardization, among open source, among research, I would put it in the map as well. So we're organizing an event in November at ETSI where we're going to bring 3GPP, we're going to bring ORAN, different open source projects, and yeah, the idea is to bring these different parties together and try to find best practices and good ideas for collaborating and establishing this feedback loop that is so difficult to achieve. So I hope to see some of you there. Thank you.
Any questions for Silvia? So maybe I can ask you a question, Silvia. These projects, we don't know much about them yet. I'm looking forward to the SNS for SNS workshop that is taking place in November. Mm-hmm. I think it's 11, 12?
It's 12 to 14 of
12
November.
12 to 14 of November at ETSI,
yes,
right across the road over there. So yeah, and I can also say here that the ORAN software community is going to participate there, and OSFG also on behalf of ORAN will be there. So we're really looking forward to that. I just wanted to know, what's the size of the contributors? I mean, what's the contributor group like in one of these projects, for instance, and where are they coming from? These contributors.
Okay, it's typically quite diverse. We typically have operators, of course. We have academia. We have also, for example, in the case of open source Mano, we have companies that are there to redistribute the software or to integrate the software in networks. So it's quite diverse, I would say.
Okay. So, the interesting thing is that, for example, LFN or LF has open source projects, and now ETSI also has that. Mm. So, how other groups probably do. Mm-hmm. So how do you see that, wouldn't it, for example, make more sense that the software is over there and standardization is over here, even though collaborations can?
So we've been discussing with Arpit. You want to take it directly? Yeah.
Yeah, so I will cover some of it in the afternoon, but I don't think people know the whole concept of standards and open source harmonization was started about 7 years ago with ETSI and LF. Okay. So we were the first ones to write that paper jointly with the previous Director General and come out with the concept that if there is a standard, code it. If there's no standard, code it and upstream it. Right? Fail fast, do it quickly. So that has now gone over everywhere. I think these projects, other than OSM was an overlap 5 years ago, but it has definitely not expanded in scope to get to the end-to-end orchestration. So there was an ONAP component with OSM. So we actually technically figured out how to make it complementary. Other than that, most of these projects are quite complementary, right? They are solving one particular use case or two, just like our project. So in general, there should be no overlap. I mean, we are too small a community and declining, let's face it, that we have time to waste. Unlike, the cloud native community where there are 7 projects trying to solve the same problem, right?
So we've been discussing about it, and yes, the sooner we talk together, I mean, it's important that different organizations talk to each other. We don't reinvent the wheel. If something is out there, we take it, we grow it, and we avoid overlap as much as possible.
Very reassuring. Thank you. Any other questions?